Good morning. Where I live here in Minister in Utah, sometimes this phrase comes out about giving, and it goes like this: pay your tithe, pay your tithe. Now, the whole tithe concept is interesting in and of itself, because even growing up in church, it was often, the giving was referred to as tithes and offerings. Tithes and offerings. What is a tithe first? A tithe is a tenth. And so you go to the Old Testament law, you see a number of times that tithe is referenced in terms of giving. Pay the tithe. Is that anywhere in your Bible? Well, actually, there isn't a statement about paying your tithe. In Deuteronomy 26, verse 12, it says, when you have finished paying all the tithe of your produce in the 3rd year, which is the year of tithing, give it to the Levite. So tithing, a giving of a tenth. I hear this often in Christian church circles, giving your tithes and offerings. Locally here in Utah, pay your tithe. Let me debunk something here a little bit. When you come into the New Testament giving does not mandate a tithe. You'll not find it in the New Testament at all. What you will find is 2 Corinthians 8 and 9 that talk about giving and giving. The word actually is the word from which we get the English word hilarious. To give hilariously, to give cheerfully. You'll see the idea of sacrificial giving. You'll see that God is pleased with sacrifices that we give and so forth. But you do not see a mandated tenth. Now, when somebody hears that, initially they go, phew, that's good news. I don't have to give a tenth. Well, that would be the wrong way of thinking about it. To give, right, you're giving of an offering. That's how the New Testament understands it. You're giving a gift, and that gift is the kind of thing that you should give out of the abundance that God has blessed you with. That's what we learn in Pauline literature. We give out of the abundance that God has blessed us with. And so one of the things we should ask is, if the law demanded a tithe, would we assume that we would give less than what the law demanded if grace exceeds law? If the old covenant was a shadow of the new covenant, if the old covenant's glory, according to 2 Corinthians 3, 7 and following, was not as magnificent and amazing as the new covenant, why would we assume that we would give less in the new covenant? No. We would give more. We would give out of a great abundance in that way. So a couple of things I want you to be sort of mindful of this morning. Number one, there isn't this notion of, in New Testament giving of, under the gospel, pay your tithe. What there is a sense of offering to the Lord out of how he has blessed you. Secondly, the tithe itself, that tenth, as a sort of a lawful starting place or a lawful construct, is just not present in the New Testament. Is there a principle that might not be a bad place to, you can say that if you want to, but there's nothing in the text that tells you that's where you start. Third, there is a trajectory theologically that points to the idea that since the glories of the new covenant exceed the glories of the old covenant, how much more should you give out of how God's blessed you? So if anything, you want to exceed, not undervalue what giving in the law was. So my counsel to you is, don't focus on paying your tithe. Instead, you would focus on giving out of the abundance that God's blessed you with, commensurate with the riches of the new covenant. May the Lord bless you today.